Over my lifetime, I've had 11 surgeries all over my body since the first one was at the age of 3. The last recent one was back in November of 2024 for my vision. We seem a little more disconnected than ever. And I think, especially for our generation growing up with phones, it's kind of like this domino effect, too. Like, when you're in a place where you already enjoy, you have an interest in, or you're naturally curious about, it really does make it so much easier to kind of get out of your shell and push yourself a bit to talk to people and to ask questions. I was forced to be inside and sort of, sit with myself, which was actually one of the most uncomfortable experiences that I've had is, thinking about how we live in a world where, it's a lot of noise and distraction, and then having the chance to actually sit with yourself and everything that kind of bubbles up.
Hello, Alan. It's great to see you. Welcome to We Are Mentally United podcast. It is such an honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's so good to see you too. I haven't seen you since last year.
Definitely, it's been quite some time, but I feel like things have been moving so fast, and a lot of things have been happening with you, as well as here on our channel. So it definitely feels like a long time. All right, great to have you here, Alan. For those who might not know you, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Alan Cruz. I am a content marketer, writer, I'm an advocate. When I had met Naomi, so kind of going back to not seeing you since last year, since the Forbes 30 Under 30 Summit back in Cincinnati, Ohio, which was in September of 2024. During that time, when you asked me that question, actually, when we had met, I had introduced myself as someone who was going through a lot of transformational events. One of the biggest ones was last year. I had retina detachment in both my eyes. And for those who don't know what retina detachment is, in short, simple terms, it basically meant that I was losing my vision. And at one point, I did lose some of my vision in my left eye back in June, the beginning of summer of 2024. And so that was a lot of events where I've ultimately, since 2024, now coming into 2025, I've had 4 eye surgeries. My vision is back. I feel better than ever, healthier, more and a more authentic and more embraced version of myself. And back then, I told people, you know what, I'm figuring it out, because that event just made me self-reflect, and I was in this mode of figuring out who I was, what my purpose was, what did I want to do, what aligned with me and my values. And so now, I'm still on that journey, and I feel like we're always on that journey, but I can say with confidence that I'm now someone that is building and scaling a content marketing business, working with mission and purpose driven organizations and brands. And on the same side, also continuing my own advocacy. As before I transitioned into entrepreneurship, I was an advocate, having worked in government affairs, in policy. And so, yeah, right now, just in this journey of being a human, of discovering myself, but also uplifting people in my community and others through business and entrepreneurship right now.
Thank you so much for that, Alan. And I am so relieved and happy to see you doing really well and thriving and, physically at your
Yes,
best.
thank
So
you.
I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, you have had quite an interesting and resilient journey in your young age. So we're definitely going to be speaking a little bit about that. Um, but since you brought it up, let's just how important has resilience been in your life, dealing with this kinds of difficult and challenging, whether especially with your health, because that's it's really difficult, and people who might not be faced with that like day to day don't think about it a lot, but you're still able to maintain um like you're so full of life every time we speak. So I just how what does resilience mean to you, and how do you keep that up even in difficult times?
Oh, that's such a good question. I've actually never thought about what resilience meant to me. I feel like resilience was always something that was not automatic, but I am someone that lives with a medical condition called Marfan syndrome, which is basically a genetic disorder that affects the connective tissue in my body. So, in summary, to also simplify that term, it basically affects everything in my body, which sounds like what does that actually mean? Over my lifetime, I'm now 24. I've had 11 surgeries all over my body since the first one was at the age of 3. The last recent one was back in November of 2024 for my vision, which thankfully I am all good. It's been restored, and I'm just following up with my medical providers to ensure that I'm still good. But for me, resilience has always come in the form of not just physical resilience, of going through surgeries and going through procedures. But I think I've come to learn in this last year and coming into 2025 that resilience just means being my authentic self. And especially growing up, having gone through many surgeries as a kid, as a teen, that really impacted my physical, mental, and emotional growth in a way where at some point while growing up, I felt like I was kind of like at the bottom of the world. Like everything happened against me. I had no control. I had no sense of independence. And all of the medical things that happened to me during while I was growing up were choices made about me by other people. So by my parents, by doctors, by teachers. There was always someone making a choice for me and not really involving me. And so it to kind of go back to what resilience means to me in terms of being authentic, it also means being autonomous and being independent and actually embracing myself and making choices for me. And for me, thankfully, it's been choices and decisions that have led towards growth, towards embracing joy, towards embracing all the good stuff, despite the fact that going through my journey and my own life experiences were challenging. They were hard. You know, I think it goes without saying that that's what life is. But for me, it's really just been about taking ownership of myself, of my choices, of how I choose to live my life. And as I highlighted in the beginning, that especially this last year, highlighted what life meant to me because you realize that life is so short, that nothing is promised, tomorrow isn't promised, anything can really happen to you, whether you're able-bodied and healthy or not. We're always, one moment, one experience away from our life completely changing. And I'm just grateful that in this moment, I'm able to live life as myself, make choices for me, and letting go of the fear, letting go of the doubt, of the imposter syndrome that I especially had last year, even before everything happened with my eyes and the retina detachment and the surgeries. And so resilience for me has really just been taking ownership and embracing my full authentic self and living life in an aligned way that is right for me.
That's so incredible to hear that, Alan. And I resonate with quite a bit of that. I feel like me and you are both 2000 babies kind of exploring our quarter life crisis at the same time.
No, literally.
I feel like we bonded so much in our conversations because of like so many things we had in common. And one of the things that I've really been thinking about this past few months is,
Mhm.
like you said, you're like one experience away from your whole life changing and not necessarily always for the better. And not only does that make you grateful, but it also makes you really think about what you want to do with your life, with your time,
Mhm.
what like how many years do you have? Like the absolute maximum, you have like 99 years. So it
No
really
worry.
puts things into perspective, you know. And I want to ask you, like you speak about like taking ownership of your life and taking your power back, and
Mhm.
what were some ways you were able to do that? Did you have any like family support? Was there any hobbies that you developed that helped you do that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Especially in the last few years. It really has been, I think I can pinpoint since 2022 specifically was when I actually really started to act on taking ownership of my life and who I was and who I am. And it started off when I had graduated back in May of 2022 from college, and I'm first generation, so I'm the oldest and the first one in my family to hold a bachelor's degree, which was a huge, it was a big deal for us.
Yeah.
And my parents are immigrants from Mexico, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And so I was always the one kind of setting the example. And so that was huge for me. And but up until that point, when I had graduated, I then moved to Washington, D.C. and had worked in Congress. So I had a previous career in government affairs and policy. I had worked 6 months in a U.S. Senate office here in Las Vegas. And then once I graduated, moved over to D.C. to work in the D.C. policy office. And it was during that time that I realized that all of the choices that I made up until that point were sort of choices that I made for myself, but they were also choices that I made because I felt like that's what I had to do. And so when I realized that as I was living in DC, which I want to say was one of the most transformative, the most fun summers and experiences of my life. I still go back to DC to this day. I'll actually be there next month in February to visit some friends and to see community back there. Even though it's cold, I don't do the cold, but I love the people that I met in the community over there. So I visit as often as I can. But when that happened, I was a few weeks into my job working in DC, and I just woke up one day. I remember it was a Wednesday. I woke up like at 5:15 in the morning. You had to wake up extra early to get ready and to make the stopover to the Senate office. And I just had a gut feeling, like a voice in my inside of me that said, "This isn't it. This is not it at all." And I don't know where it came from or what led up to it. I just heard it so loud and clear that it literally like vibrated through my body. And so from that moment on, while I was still working, I was looking at all alternative paths as to, how can I live a life then that is fulfilling for me? Because I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy with the work and the job that I was in. And I felt like I wasn't my authentic self, myself completely. I mean, we're talking about working in one of the most powerful institutions in the world. There's specific ways to act, to think, to look, and I don't think that really resonated with me, who's very creative, who's very out there. Like personalities, it just didn't mesh. And so when I came back home, I took a few months break because I had always been working since I was 15 years old. And so I decided to give myself a break. And that was, I think, my first choice of ownership, was making that brave choice to let go of an environment and a career that I thought was what I was meant to do. Even though, I studied it in college, I did everything I could to get into this position to work
Mm-hmm.
in Congress, and then realizing a few weeks into it, the reality of it, that it wasn't for me at all. So that was really the first choice that I made where I really took ownership. And then from there, it just transformed into leaning into my curiosity. So I signed up for a tech mentorship program and got paired up with somebody who was a startup owner who was in tech and marketing. And I found that, wow, like this is super creative. There's a lot of ownership. You can kind of create your own path. And that really attracted me. And then going into 2023, I started taking more steps towards taking ownership and autonomy and really embracing myself. I actually started Latin dancing classes for salsa and bachata, and for me, I had always thought that I was a horrible dancer. Like I had no rhythm. I didn't know how to move. I had two left feet. And when I took those classes, I had always said years before taking the classes in 2023, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take some classes. I'll take some Latin classes or some hip hop classes. But I never did. And I think a part of why I never did was because my own complicated history growing up with my body. I mean, the fact that I had several surgeries throughout my body, and I felt at one point when I was a teenager, as I was going through these surgeries, that I was an alien in my body. Like this wasn't my body. Choices were being made for me. I didn't have a say. It was excruciating. It was painful. I mean, one of the worst surgeries, the most painful ones that I had was when I was about 13 years old, going into high school, and I was hospitalized for half a month and had to spend the whole summer kind of not in physical therapy, but essentially at home, like learning how to get up by myself again, to take myself to the bathroom, to walk, to run. So a lot of things during that time really made me feel like my body was foreign to me. It just didn't feel like me. And so when I decided to make that big choice of enrolling into dance classes in 2023, I was like the most uncomfortable and the most scared. It was a frightening experience because it actually meant that I needed to reconnect back with my body after
Mm-hmm.
feeling disconnected for so long. And so I will say that it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. I think it's so underestimated how much dancing is. It's not just dancing, right? I think people think of dancing as just like, you just, move to the beat, which is part of it. But for me, it means so much more. It means autonomy. It means self-control. It means expressing joy, expressing how I feel, connecting with others, which is a lot, especially with Latin dancing, like salsa and bachata. It's a lot of dancing with other people, with a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn not just to reconnect with yourself, but to connect with other people. And not even through speaking, because I think that dancing is also a universal language where you just speak with the body, speak with expression, speak with how you move and with your energy and your aura. And so even past dancing in 2023, I still dance to this day and actually love to travel to go to different dancing events around the country. But those were just like some key monumental experiences where ownership was so important, and allowing myself to lean into the discomfort that I was avoiding, like with my body and reconnecting with it. But I started to realize that, it's those things where I feel the most uncomfortable that I need to actually do, because in that discomfort is the key, at least for me, to be able to find some sort of like salvation, some forgiveness, some reconnection to myself and my body after years of growing up and not feeling like I was the one in control. In a way, being able to get that control back and defining what that means for me now as an adult.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I feel like in different ways, a lot of people can resonate with that.
Yeah,
I feel like obviously, what you went through is really difficult, especially at the age of 13, already going through puberty and all those
yeah. Oh my
hormonal changes.
God.
And now you're, dealt a set of really difficult cards. But I feel like a lot of teenagers also experience that in different forms. So I'm really glad that you mentioned this special thing, which was dancing for you, that not only reconnected you with yourself but also with your community. And like with connection with community, right? Myself and you, we're both advocates for our generation. So let's speak a little bit about that. I feel like with during this time, like 2025 or this generation, you could say the social aspect has just been really detached, right? Like there's less social activities, or our social lives exist online rather than in person,
Yeah,
and just participating in social activities it's became more difficult, whether that's because of the way maybe it's advertised, the way people are interested, maybe it's like um just not people are not used to it, or it's too
right.
costly, it's something or the other. But really just the fact that you mentioned that it can be so rehabilitating, and it's not the first time we've spoken on this podcast about how dance can be rehabilitating. I just thought it was, so interesting that you brought that up, and even having a partner and being able to have that close physical connection with somebody, because a lot of
Yes.
people just stay isolated and they don't touch other human beings, right? So these things that we've normalized in the
Mhm.
21st century, just being able to find that one thing that might be able to really take you into a positive space. And yeah, I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I love that, especially kind of you mentioning about community. I agree with you. I think especially with the pandemic and with the rise of, I think the fact that we're the first generation to, be living in a world where we have access to everything at our fingertips, right? Like with technology, it's
Mhm.
this new concept, like smartphones is only what, like 20 maybe years old. It's almost as old as us, as
Yeah,
as
it's as
we've
old as
really grown
us.
up. It's literally as old as
My
us.
parents had their first phone like after they had me. So, yeah, pretty much.
Like it's so interesting because I've talked to other, my friends and peers and even others at the Forbes Summit when we had first met in person about, community and connection. And for me, I've realized, like, not just through dance, but community has always been important to me. I mean, when in high school, when I first started with advocacy and organizing on a lot of issues such as LGBT issues, sex education, racial justice, immigration, at my own high school and in my own state here in Nevada, I mean, community always plays such a big role because we only have each other. There's no such thing as us doing things by ourselves, or kind of being that person where, like, I did this all by myself. No, like, there's always somebody, a group of people, or some kind of community behind us that are uplifting us and supporting us, whether it's friends, it's family, it might even be acquaintances, people. And that's what I love too about the internet and social media, is that there are people who have never met each other rooting for you more than probably your closest friends. And I've definitely experienced that, but I've also seen the other side of what you've highlighted with, we seem a little more disconnected than ever. And I think, especially for our generation growing up with phones, where it's so easy, where, why bother having a conversation with somebody in person when you can just open up your phone, open up TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, text message, and send a message to somebody. And I feel like in some ways that's been so amazing with connecting us with people from around the world and from places that we might never ever get to experience and learn from. But I have seen how it's made people more secluded and feel more isolated and, more lonely than ever is what I've seen. And for me, I'm grateful that I feel like it's a learned skill. I don't know if I call it a skill, but a learned trait to connect with people in person. I solo travel a lot. So when I do solo travel, I'm the person that loves to go to dinners by myself. I'll go out by myself. I'll just vibe and have a good time. And then I just meet people in person. And for me, it's I feel like I've always had a little bit of difficulty with connecting with people online because maybe a part of me thought that it kind of felt superficial. It didn't feel genuine, not 100%, but when you're talking to somebody on a screen where you don't really know who they are, that you can pretty much be anybody, anonymous in a sense. But yeah, I have seen that. How's it been for you with connecting in person? Do you feel like you're kind of like in that middle of like you meet people, but also you're maybe a little bit shy and nervous? Because I still feel that way. I still feel like hella uncomfortable when I solo travel and I try to talk to people, and I catch myself like if I'm somewhere by myself, like I'll use my phone as a guard, right? I'm like, you know what? I'm too nervous. I'm too scared. I'm just gonna stay on my phone for a little bit because I don't know how to approach somebody like a stranger or something.
Yeah, definitely. And like I resonate with that like a lot. It's uncomfortable to say the least. I am always like a lot of those memes make it to my For You page about like having social anxiety um and just like socializing and all of that. It's really tricky, I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm. Yeah.
Currently I work at a college, so naturally we have to like talk to other people. So it's been
Mm.
really interesting. Um but having like we work in person quite a few times a week, so being able to just like connect with the staff that are there, the student staff that are there, it's just been
Yes.
really different and interesting. And it's also nice to have folks that you can resonate with on different levels. But as to creating like a third place or constantly making sure I'm
Mm.
engaged in the community, now that's another conversation, right? I do it whenever it's for Mensa United or something that like it's a
Mhm.
responsibility that I have to explore. But as of like consciously making that conscious effort, I think that's definitely something that still needs a lot of work. But yeah, no, like every now and then different things will come up. I was invited to a Swiftsgiving earlier this year, which was very exciting with folks from like
Ooh.
different folks from the community. So that was really interesting to get to know different people and get to connect. So that was really nice. But it's like if you ask my parents, they're like, "Oh yeah, I have a social thing this day, and this day this week." So it's a little different, but definitely through these little ways that the community gets together, it's definitely a progress. And I feel like being in Denver too, there's always a lot going on. And being close to downtown, there's just a lot that comes up. So, yeah, a lot of people in the community are always organizing things. Um, and, you'll hear about them or you'll get invited. So that encourages you more and more to go. But I feel like it's still a long way, long way to go, definitely.
But as you should. I feel like I always say like, like you take it at your own pace, whatever feels right for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I think especially like those moments of when I do something new, like, even just being out or going to like a new event that I've never been to before.
Hmm.
Or even recently I've been going to a lot of networking events, in the sense of meeting other people who are also interested in like media and business and social impact and advocacy. It's been definitely easier for me with going to events and spaces where I have an interest in, versus going somewhere where I don't know an example that comes to mind, but I have found that going to places where I actually enjoy or I'm interested in or I'm curious about helps me with actually talking to people because my mindset is like curiosity. And so, I'll literally just go to people and just ask questions. Like for example, a few months ago I started like kind of ish line dancing. I've never line danced before, and we and we have a country club here called
Yeah.
Stonies in Vegas. And so I had met some friends previously through this app called Time Left, where you just have dinners with strangers. And it was the first thing that I did after having my third eye surgery in July. And I had recovered fully enough to go out in the end of August. So about over a month of recovery. And so I met some people and found people who were into line dancing, and some of them were from the South, and I was like, oh, like I've always heard of line dancing. It sounds kind of interesting. I've never done it before. And so I decided, they recommended a place, and I was like, all right, cool, I'll go to this one place because it's interesting and I'm curious about it. And I remember going there, and thankfully they had free classes, and it was a totally new environment. I was so uncomfortable. I was literally sweating. I was sweating through everything because I'm somewhere where I'm not used to this environment. This isn't like, my day to day. And so it was nice because, again, like if you're naturally curious about a space or event, then you're more likely to talk to people. And so I had a personal goal, and I talked to like only one person. There was this one amazing person. She's not my friend Nature. And I just started talking to her, and I was like, do you come here often? How do you like it? And from there, it was so beautiful because I've created community now with like people who are regular line dancers. Because the last time that I went, literally 2 weekends ago, Nature, then the only person that I really knew, introduced me to a bunch of people. And so it's kind of like this domino effect too. Like, when you're in a place where you already enjoy, you have an interest in, or you're naturally curious about, it really does make it so much easier to kind of get out of your shell and push yourself a bit to talk to people and to ask questions. Because I would have never expected to meet a bunch of people just from talking to that one person, because I didn't even know that she knew everybody. She literally knew like half the place there.
Yes, yes. No, that's always interesting when you make that connection with the person that kind of knows everyone. So now you have this huge group of people who are part of your community. And before we move on from here, I just want to touch on, you mentioned being uncomfortable, and there's a really good quote around how there's no growth in discomfort.
Mm.
And to be able to there's no growth in comfort. So like to be able to grow and change and evolve as a person, that takes actually quite a bit of discomfort. um yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize on that before we kind of skipped ahead. But I know we've been touching on your journey as a creator and in the media and creative industry. So tell me a little bit about that and how you came to that. I know you have worked on several different entrepreneurial opportunities as well, which we'll be getting into.
Yeah, so in terms of getting into sort of like the media, even entrepreneurship kind of world, a little bit of what I mentioned earlier, that I first discovered it after enrolling into a tech program after I had parted away from my old career and from DC working in Congress. It's a program called Out in Tech, and it's an LGBT tech mentorship program where they pair anybody who's between the ages of 18 to 24. It doesn't matter if you're in college or not. It's as long as you're in that age range, and if you're interested in tech and anywhere within the world of tech, they'll pair you with a mentor. And so I've had two amazing mentors who kind of showed me the way of the tech world, of media, of entrepreneurship, business, just a bunch of different micro worlds too, within those big worlds. And it led me to, in 2023, I built my first ever sort of project, is what I call it. It was called Gen Z Acts, which was essentially just a media platform and a blog where I posted interviews and articles for Gen Z entrepreneurs and business owners. And it first actually started out as just a project to build my own skills in marketing and media. So I learned about website design, I learned about SEO, content writing, copywriting, email marketing, all self-taught while taking courses like on Google, on HubSpot, LinkedIn Learning. And so again, this is kind of me in this time period, and even now allowing myself to lean into my curiosity because I was actually so fascinated by these things. And so Gen Z Acts then turned into this thing where I started to interview people, like actual young business owners from our generation, startup owners. And I actually had never intended to ever do that. I actually had no interest in the first place of interviewing people. I didn't think that that was something that I was interested in, but I knew that storytelling was something that was super important to me that I really cared about, only because of the fact that over the many years I had been so comfortable and knew the impact of telling my own story, whether it be through workshops, through speaking engagements, or just talking to somebody else. And so I landed in talking to my first ever person, who was Jonathan Bell, who at 16 years old, he's from Missouri. He founded his own marketing agency while in high school. And now, a few years later, he's about 20, turning 21, and has built up this amazing business where he's giving back to his community, helping with getting jobs for young people. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And the fact that I'd reached out to him, cold messaged him on LinkedIn, as I did with a bunch of other people. And as you go through the journey of like entrepreneurship, and just life in general, is that people are never going to get back to you, people are going to reject you, they're going to say no, but I've learned that it's part of the process, right? And so when I had that first interaction with Jonathan where I interviewed him, kind of like how you're interviewing me, we did this thing where it was through Zoom, and it wasn't recorded, but it was more because I was writing it out. I was writing it in a article story profile kind of feature. But it was so fascinating getting to learn about someone else's life and their upbringing, and kind of why are they doing this? What are they trying to get at? What are their values? What are the challenges that they face, the setbacks, and the successes and the growths? And I fell in love with that process, and I learned right then and there that storytelling and interviewing somewhere in that world was something that I cared about and I loved. And so from Gen Z Acts, I then had built up my first business, which was called Cruz Remote Solutions. So I ran a recruitment agency for a few months. It was my first ever like LLC kind of official business where I had to sign up like with the IRS to get an EIN, a bunch of these terms, but it was like my first ever like official big boy business. Had learned a lot there with marketing, self-teaching myself, and it was pretty successful with the way that I had recruited people. But I found out that it wasn't fulfilling, but I was grateful for the skills that I learned, and I took that with me into then building up another project. I was working on a social media page that I was just building up for fun because I'm also into like spirituality and a manifestation, and so I had built up a brand for that on TikTok. That was just for fun. It was really for me. And again, just a way to just be curious and be creative and build my skills in a fun way. And then ultimately has led me now to I've built up building a new media platform and company I'm calling Poderoso Media, which is a company and platform right now that aims to empower the 5 million plus Hispanic and Latino entrepreneurs in the US. And so that kind of was born out of many experiences. I think number one, of me being the first entrepreneur like in my family as well, and navigating that process by myself. And I've learned to ask for help now, and thankfully, I've been enrolling into some coaching programs with some people and going to more community events and meeting people and relying on community again. I think that was an aspect that I had really forgotten about in the last few years, because I think that entrepreneurship, when I first thought about it, was this isolating self only me journey, but I realized that's not true at all. But Poderoso Media actually also came after the Forbes Summit when we had met, because I was figuring out what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to build that aligns with impact, aligns with my values, and making the world a better place, and just helping people and making an impact? And so immediately, like a week or two after the summit, and after talking to a bunch of people like yourself and everyone else that I had met at Forbes, I was like, you know what? It'd be so cool to build something where we can like be a resource hub, to start off as a resource hub for other Hispanic or Latino entrepreneurs in the US. Because I'm sure that there are other people like me who have no idea how to file for an LLC, or what is, a 504 loan. And it was all these things that I was learning as I went. And so I just started building the website, and again, taking from the skills that I learned earlier from building my projects and my businesses, I was like, okay, well, I've learned all these, from having fun and kind of being creative and building these things. So building up Poderoso Media, and then towards the end of 2024, so November, December, so about a month or two ago, I was then going to events and talking to people, and people were like, oh, do you offer marketing services? Do you, because I've built up these skills, right, in different marketing sort of facets. And I was like, no, I'm kind of just building this for fun. I was like, I'm literally just building this for fun. I don't know what I'm doing. But that kind of having many conversations where people were like, I'd be interested in having you help me out with marketing, right? To be able to help tell the story, and connect with people in their audience. And again, that aligned with my values too, with community, with impact, because many of these business owners and brands were purpose and mission driven, either nonprofit or single business owners, and they wanted to ultimately connect their story to people. And I was like, you know what? Let me take a chance on myself. And as I'm building Poderoso Media, which I'm super excited right now, we just onboarded a marketing specialist who I'm collaborating with right now to essentially for 2025 at least, we're going to be working on building partnerships with Hispanic and Latino organizations that are in tech and entrepreneurship, um, kind of co-building some projects with them. TBD on what that actually looks like, but yeah, basically scaling that up and making Poderoso Media this premier resource hub as the go-to for any Latino or Hispanic entrepreneur. So I'm super excited for that. But yeah, on the flip side of that, I've also begun with building out and scaling a content marketing business, and I have two clients right now. One is a trauma-informed LGBT fitness coach, and another one is an education advocate. Essentially, what she does is helps support and advocate for students with disabilities, with special needs, who need IEP plans. And so everything that I'm doing right now as I'm building up that content marketing business along with Poderoso Media, sort of on the back services end, has been aligning with being mission driven and purpose driven. So in terms of like that media world and with business and entrepreneurship, it's definitely been, I'm laying the foundation and the groundwork for building up something that I'm going to be proud of and that's going to make an impact here.
Amazing, yeah. Thank you so much for diving deeply into that. And I did have an opportunity to look at some of the work Poderoso Media has been doing, and I was really impressed by how you've provided all these resources. Because myself being like a business owner and then being on the board of a nonprofit for the first time, it's definitely a really daunting experience,
Yeah.
and there's nowhere to get the information like unless someone tells you, or just like myself, I'm first gen, so it's not like I could just ask anyone in my family and they'd be like, "Yeah, this is from my
I
all
feel
my
that.
businesses. Here you go." Like, no, there's literally no one to tell you. And I was just so excited to see all the different resources that you had provided up there. So yeah, I'm also very excited to see how the next few months progress. And I just wanted to say how proud you should be because you did this in such a short amount of time. Because I remember us, speaking before even the formation, and now to see that you folks have made such a stride. Yeah, you should be proud of yourself, and I'm really
Thank
excited.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, like once I have like an idea in mind and it's like a fire in me, like I just run with it. And I appreciate that about myself. And also, the conversation that I had with you and so many people at Forbes that really led to me like lighting that fire under me to actually start and do it. So I also want to express my gratitude towards you and meeting you because I got so much I'm a believer that like, everyone is kind of like a mirror to you, right? Like mirroring something. And from our conversation, and to you talking about mentally united and all the work that you've been doing, I was like, you know what? Let me just hit the pedal and go with this. And so literally as soon as that summit ended and I went back to Vegas, I immediately like hit the ground running. So I also want to extend my gratitude towards you because you played a role too in like lighting that fire under me to actually just go for it and do it.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. It's so incredible because you speak about um community. We speak about it a lot, and I feel like that's also reflected a lot in the work that you're doing right now.
Mhm.
And it's like every single person that takes a part is important. And yeah,
Yes.
it's just so empowering. And for folks who are watching this resource is not exclusive to Latin communities. It is inclusive of so many different communities. So don't hesitate to check it out and see the incredible
Yes.
work that you folks are doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to emphasize on that, it's yeah, Poderoso Media is not exclusive only to, the Latinx or Hispanic community. It's actually, if you look at the resources at poderosomedia.com, like you'll see that many of the resources pretty much can be for almost any entrepreneur. But I think especially focusing on resources for marginalized entrepreneurs, I think for, those who are BIPOC, who are Hispanic, women, LGBT, the disabled community. So a good amount of those resources on our website are also specifically for marginalized entrepreneurs. So not just for Latinx or Hispanic entrepreneurs, because a lot of our identities, as we know, we're multifaceted beings, so they kind of overlap. So I would definitely recommend and emphasize that point to definitely check it out because there's always something for someone.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Alan. Then I kind of want to rewind a little bit to Gen Z acts you speak about. So I keep looking at a lot of the work you're doing, and it comes from somewhere that your values lie or something that you resonate with
Yes.
highly. And that's always so interesting to me. And what was what would you say was the driving force that made you want to advocate for this community, or now has made you want to advocate for Latinx and minority entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I feel like I've always held kind of mentioning values. The value that I've always held since I was younger was empowerment. And again, connecting back to my own past of, feeling disempowered and decisions being made for me where I wasn't exactly empowered to make my own choices for myself as I was growing up, especially with the surgeries and the medical conditions and Marfan syndrome that I grew up with. And so empowerment has always played a key role in my life and using my voice and using my being as a way to be able to empower myself and other people. And when I first created Gen Z Acts, it actually came out because I was working with one of my mentors and trying to figure out, as I start with marketing and building my skills, what is the target audience? You'll hear that term a lot in marketing. What is your target audience that you want to focus on? And for me, I was like, I don't know. Like, I have all these identities. I'm queer, I'm Latino, I'm disabled, I'm first generation, and at first I kind of grappled with that because all of these identities and communities are all interconnected with me, right? I can't just kind of isolate one from the other because they're intertwined, they're interconnected. It would be impossible to separate them. But for me, I just decided back in 2023, I was like, you know what, I'm going to start somewhere. Let me focus with young entrepreneurs. And I think it was because the fact that I was 22 at the time and was kind of seeing, especially on social media, how a lot of younger entrepreneurs from our generation were, just building things and taking chances. And, you'll see successful people and then maybe people who, they failed and it's a learning process and they're learning from what they built and what they were doing. And so I was like, you know what? This seems kind of cool. Let me just focus on young, Gen Z, on our generation. And also, I think it was because a lot of other generations and people would talk bad about us. And so
Yeah.
I feel like to me, I was like, you know what? I'm intentionally making it Gen Z Acts because the title itself is like, our generation is taking action. And that was what I valued as well was action, initiative. And so I just combined the two values of empowerment and action slash initiative and just created Gen Z Acts. And that also kind of is reflected like with Poderoso Media, again, with empowerment, with taking action. But I think the kind of the difference now with Poderoso Media is also being more culturally inclusive of, like Latinx and Hispanic culture. And one of the things that when I created it that we're going to be working on hopefully later this year is actually putting on in-person experiential events and again, not just for the Latinx and Hispanic community, but for all communities, for all marginalized communities, especially to be able to embrace your culture, especially in a world of business where I used to think of business and thought that it was a white man wearing a suit who's, middle aged. And that was my only sort of representation of business. And so I've then found from conversations with people and observing the world that many of us in the Latinx and Hispanic community, and again, just saying that broadly because there's also smaller communities within, just saying Latinx and Hispanic communities. But I think the need for us to embrace our culture and embrace our authentic selves because they're interconnected with our identities and who we are. You can't isolate one or the other. They have to be connected. You have to bring them both. And I think having that permission and the empowerment to bring your full self, whether it's speaking Spanish, Portuguese, or another language from Latin America, whether it's showing up in some more traditional sort of, clothing or garment, whether it's the way that we act, the way that you express yourself. I think like instead of trying to dismiss or tone that down, embracing that and creating those kinds of spaces. So that's one of the goals too with Poderoso Media is being more culturally inclusive and embracing our culture, without shame, without feeling embarrassed, without stigma. And so we'll be doing events, or at least the vision is to do some events in different cities and to kind of have a little pilot program where we start with one city and try to put convenings together. And the twist is, other than making it a networking kind of event, is to add in some sort of like cultural aspects, whether it's some celebrations, some dances. I think being a dancer, I really, really envision having dancing instructors as part of the events to show people how to dance salsa, bachata, merengue, and making it open to all people, not just for those in the Latinx Hispanic community, but definitely going back to your question with the values of empowerment, of initiative and action. And I think just like authenticity now too, just embracing who you are and bringing your full self to the table, no matter what room you're in.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I've seen you describe Poderoso Media as a disruptive force in the industry. And I just wanted to touch a little bit about that because, like you mentioned, the corporate and the business world, they don't shy away from marketing excessively to minorities. I'm a student of marketing as well, like with the pink
Mm-hmm.
tax, just rainbow capitalism, all of that good stuff, right? They don't really shy away from um, using any sort of, whether it's like cultural identity, to use that to market to us. So they don't really shy away from that. But when it comes to the flip side, and when it comes to supporting minority creators, minority entrepreneurs, um, business owners, it's a completely different story. Um,
Yes.
so, and I can see that was really something you thought about in the process of creation. And, I'm just
Yes.
excited to that you also mentioned that not only are you setting up these spaces with the intention of conducting formal business, but also
Right.
bringing the culture part into it. Because, like I said, they don't shy away from using that to market to us and get us to buy stuff.
Oh, they know.
But
Yeah.
we can't use our own culture to get comfortable in these powerful spaces. So, yeah.
Exactly. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think yeah, in describing Poderoso Media as like a sort of, disruption. I've always loved the word disruption, and I think it's coming from when I first started out in organizing and advocacy, especially like, with other minorities and marginalized people from in our communities. Is the point was always to disrupt the status quo, right? We're here intentionally making noise and doing things differently in a disruptive way. And I feel like people often think disruptive as this negative thing. And disruptive for me, at least, like the definition has changed over the past few years, has been, doing something that is in alignment with you. That although it may not reflect the mainstream or the world right now, but is something that is in alignment and authentic to you. And so, I mean, I think some people might see, being in embracing your culture as disruptive, especially if it's people who may not are not connected to their own culture in a sense. And I have found that even in conversations with other Latinx and Hispanic entrepreneurs who, talking about the idea or seeing Poderoso Media, kind of were like, like, I mean, I guess, or I don't know about that. But I think it's then again being disruptive and creating those spaces in a world where you can just embrace that if you want to. If you don't want to, that's your choice. If you want to, it's also your choice, and you should be able to. I think
Mhm.
just making it the norm, right? I'm not trying to make it something where it's like this unique thing or something that is, non-traditional, but just making it just part of the norm. And so some people might see that as disruptive, but for me, it's just, just making it so normal that you're not even going to bat an eye if, you see somebody who's embracing themselves and their culture in whatever way that looks like for them.
Definitely, definitely. And I love that you just said like having the choice of doing it.
Mhm.
We just want to be able to give people that choice. But yeah,
Yes.
circling back a little bit, a theme that kept coming up in today's conversation is our alignment with what ourselves and what we're doing. And you spoke about, being spiritual and manifesting. That's also
Yeah.
really important to us, and it
Yes.
has manifested itself in the way that we run our channel, and our organization.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess my question is, you have lived a testament to that. Like you had something that you pursued for the first quarter of your life, which was, advocacy. You're a criminal justice major,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
you moved across the nation to DC, and then you said no,
Literally,
and
I said not today.
not today. And before that, also like in high school, in college, before that,
Mhm.
you did so much work in advocacy. You led different talks. So I just wanna like, in your perspective, how important do you think it is that people are doing things that align with themselves? And I understand that not everyone will have the luxury to pick and choose that at any point of time,
Mhm.
but we do
Yeah.
have the choice to start working towards it any day. So touch a little bit on that.
100%. Yeah. Whenever I think of aligning with myself and what truly matters to me, it's different for everybody. And for me, it took time and figuring out like what that actually meant for me. And it's still a process because, as human beings, we're always evolving. We're always changing. The things that I enjoyed or that I thought I was supposed to do like last year, last month. I mean, today is completely different. And so, and in being in alignment with yourself also includes and being aware and acknowledging that we're always evolving and that we're never going to be stuck in this one way or we have to do this one thing, which is what I used to think, kind of going back to when I started off in advocacy and organizing and a lot of lobbying. And I studied criminal justice with the intention to go to law school to then work either with a social justice organization or in some capacity like that. And I thought that, oh, I have to stay in this world because this is all I've ever done. These are all my past experiences. So I have to. And I think we catch a lot of people who justify that, but because I've done this for X, Y, and Z time, I just have to stick with it now. And so for me, I thought, no, like, we're always evolving, we're always changing. And you when you talk to people, you hear people's stories about how at different points in life they were doing different things, they had different identities, but they gave themselves the permission, the choice to change, to evolve. And so when I talk about, with aligning with yourself, and it is a process, it really is for me, especially in the last year, as I was going through my eye surgeries and reflecting on myself, it was a lot of thinking about, okay, what are the things that light me up? And what are the things that don't light me up? And it's usually easier when you start off with the things that you don't like, the things that don't light you up, because then it gives you room to, number one, I see it as like a brain dump. But then number two, it also gives you room to realize, okay, like actually, these are the things that light me up: dancing, traveling, empowerment, mission driven, purpose driven. I literally would just brain dump and just write different words that came to mind. I didn't think about it. Like I wasn't over analyzing it. I wasn't overthinking it. I was like, you know what? what lights me up, just write it down. And then in that self-reflection period, which I think, everybody can do, right? Even if we're in situations where we might not be able to take that big action to make that big change, I think being able to have something as simple as just self-reflecting, writing, taking time with yourself to figure out what brings you joy, what makes you the most excited. And that was sort of like my first step in really aligning with myself in this last year, was just taking the time to recognize, you know what? I don't like these things. It does not align with me. I can let it go and I would be perfectly fine. But then there are things where I've recognized this is super exciting. It lights me up. Like I feel excited to wake up every single day by doing these things. And when I mention these things, they don't have to be things that are work or business related. It can literally be as simple as me being outside and feeling the sun, me being in nature, me meeting new people. Like those things make me come alive. And so, as I'm in this continuous journey of being in alignment with myself, it's always me. I am changing my minds and I'm evolving. I think that's one point to emphasize, as I mentioned earlier, is that give yourself the grace to change your mind. We're evolving all the time. There's no need to stick with something just because you've done it for so long. And I feel like people hold on to that because it's familiar. It's all that you've ever known, but it does require a bit of courage and discomfort to be able to let that go to make room for something new that is actually way better for you. And again, it's a process, and I think everyone goes through their own journey. But for me, like it's meant so much. And once you start to taste that little bit of like letting go of small things and adopting the new things that are actually lighting you up, making you so excited, you kind of see how everything really kind of aligns for you. Things kind of unfold. Even for me, while I was going through my eye surgeries, I just let go of things and I was like, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know why this is happening, but I'm just going to trust myself and lean in on that trust. And thankfully now, almost 6, 7 months later, it's led up to us having this conversation and talking about all the amazing things that I'm doing and that you're doing with Mentally United. And so, yeah, being in alignment definitely means just acknowledging that we're always evolving and leaning into that discomfort and not being afraid to just let certain things go and not being afraid of embracing what makes you excited and joyful too.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, that's really incredible, and it's a journey, but it's a journey that one should initiate so that eventually they do reach there. But I want to ask you, while we're still on this topic, you've already shared a lot of different things that contributed to you leading a more positive life. But what would you either recommend to people that has supported you in your own mental wellness journey, or you would like to give a mention to some things that supported you in your mental wellness?
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's a lot of things. And these are specific activities, and I'm saying this with like I'm a firm advocate for, try different things and find out if it works for you or not, because I've done many different things in my own like mental wellness journey where I've experimented with some things and it just wasn't for me. It just didn't work out for me. And it takes trial and error. And I feel like recognizing that as you try different things for your own journey, like know that you will find things that won't work for you. And that's okay. That's actually useful because now you know what doesn't work for you and it gets you closer to what does work for you. But for me specifically, especially in 2024, as I was going through my retinal detachments and was pretty much, I was forced to be inside and sort of, sit with myself, which was actually one of the most uncomfortable experiences that I've had is thinking about how we live in a world where, it's very a lot of noise and distraction, and then having the chance to actually sit with yourself and everything that kind of bubbles up. What helped keep me, you know, it is in a sense what kept me sane, but also kept me optimistic and joyful and on a path where I ensured that I was, taking care of my needs emotionally, physically, mentally, was breath work, meditation, yoga, and journaling. And also, I'll add in a fifth one, which I believe really does tie in with your own mental wellness journey, but was trying new things that scared me. So, being in uncomfortable situations. Those five things were literally the things that I had done since, recovering over the past few months that have really elevated me and finding what works for me to live a mentally well and mentally positive life. And again, it's all trial and error. And it's funny because some things like yoga and meditation, I actually had tried in the past, prior to everything that happened with me going in recovery last year. I tried
Mhm.
it in 2023, in 2022, even before that. It just never stuck with me during that season. But last year, it stuck just like that. Like it felt like something just clicked, like a puzzle piece kind of like connected with another, and it just fit perfectly. And so that's just also an emphasis in terms of just like when you try new things for your own journey. Like there are periods of times where some things you'll try just won't work out, but it just might not be that right time for you to do that. As I've learned in my own experience when I did yoga and meditation years ago, it probably just wasn't for me. But last year, absolutely, because all of those things, breath work, meditation, yoga, journaling, and doing new things that scare me, I do them daily. Like they are now instilled habits that I have done for like 5 or 6 months now that I think will carry on with me for the rest of my life.
That's so incredible to hear that. And one of the things I like to say is, as a person, you're a different person every single day. Like you've
Yes.
had so many experiences, like just in the past year, so many things have changed
Mm-hmm.
in my life, in your life, that like I'm not the same person I was when I graduated college. Who's that girl?
Me.
I'm a grown up now. So it's so exciting that you bring that up. And while we're still on this topic, I want to ask you a little bit more like um did you go to a yoga class? Did you do yoga at home? Like how did you get comfortable with
Mhm.
yoga? And also with journaling, like did you journal like once per day, once per week? How did you
Mhm.
adopt these really incredible items into your mental wellness routine?
Yeah, so it was all at home because at the time while I was recovering, going through back-to-back surgeries, I was not able to leave the house. I had to be inside. And so my room, which actually wasn't even my room because I'm here at the moment, at my family home, and we don't have enough room, so I'm kind of like in like the hallway of like upstairs hallway. The only thing that makes it a room is like there's like curtains that I put to give me some kind of privacy, but I actually just started off just doing it in my room and literally in the hallway. I always had a yoga mat because um I love to do stretching. And so I always just had a yoga mat handy. And so, yeah, the idea came to me while I was recovering. And I thought, you know what? What are some ways I can help with my immune system? How can I help my own, not just physical health, because obviously, I was going through surgeries for that for my eyesight, but like my own mental and emotional health? Like, how can I keep myself grounded? So, I experimented there was like a yoga app I saw and I just downloaded it and it gave me like these 7 or 8 simple yoga movements to do every single morning, literally just 5 minutes a day. And I started off with that. So, starting off very small, like very easy, very small, only took a few minutes out of my day. And that then kind of turned into watching some YouTube videos and adopting like different yoga moves and like mobility techniques. And I want to emphasize that while doing that, I actually, I never really followed. There's some people who have creators who have like 30-day challenges, do this every single morning. I found that doing the same thing every day for yoga specifically was it would never stick. So I would just adopt different movements that I saw or that I would watch and then put into my own routine. So I would just have different movements and whatever felt so right and that I needed, I just did it. And then whatever else that I didn't really need to do, I just let it go. I was like, maybe it'll be good for next year. But right now I
Yeah.
know what I need. So that one was a slow progress and I had to be very careful because while recovering for eye surgery, there was instruction that I had to be in specific positions for my eye, in order to heal properly. So I took that into consideration with some of the movements that I did, with making sure that I followed the instructions of my doctor. But also, just being very light, being very chill, very soft with the way that I had taken care of myself through yoga. Breath work was one. I always recommend to people like Wim Hof method. It's a specific style of breath work for me, at least, because I've also tried different breath works from different creators and different techniques. Wim Hof method was one that it doesn't matter. I do it every single time, and I just feel so grounded and so amazing. So again, it's really all about also giving yourself the permission to experiment and not just stick with one thing or one creator or one technique. Like I literally experimented with so many just by looking up on YouTube, doing 5 minute breath work, 2 minute breath work, 10 minute breath work, whatever I would allow and that felt right for me. And then I would just build on that. So actually, I started off with doing 2 minutes at first, and then did a 5 minute one, and then moved up to a 10 minute one. So it was a slow, gradual progress. And I think that's what my recovery taught me was slow down, take things day by day, step by step. There's no need to go from 0 to 100. And I think that mindset is what got me in the first place with the retina detachment. Not to say that it was my fault, but I had been living a life where I was like, let me just go from 0 to 100. I'm going to ignore all the baby steps. I'm going to ignore building a foundation for myself that actually is important and aligned with me. And so then that kind of also just taught me to slow down and to allow myself to take my time and not compare myself to people's journeys, because that is what I was kind of doing. Because again, it was during the summertime and I was like, wow, I had all these plans that are not going to happen now because I'm, fighting to save my eyesight. But it actually gave me a lot of great lessons to reflect and learn from. So I would definitely say those movements and getting into those is all about experimenting and just seeing what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with me. And we always have various episodes like discussing specifically when it comes to different physical activities, doing what is right for you, whether that's like with
Yes.
exercise, rehabilitation. So I'm glad that you brought that point up one more time. And also, I do want people to understand that like whenever we talk about different ways to take care of your mental wellness, it doesn't always have to be the most out there
Yeah.
textbook version of it, And I'm glad you spoke about that because um, I really want people to see that like it can start small. It can start with 2 minutes, like you said,
Yeah.
and it can start in literally any space that you have available in your house and without causing you the discomfort of going out of your house if you like to stay home like me. So I'm really glad you
That's
brought
fair.
that up. Yeah. All right. And I do want to give our audience a little bit more into your journey as a storyteller and as a creator. You mentioned that you kind of started by telling your own story, which you're a beautiful storyteller, by the way,
Oh,
and
thank you.
yeah, and now that has evolved into something much bigger. So, just tell me a little bit about your journey as a storyteller, as a marketer. Anything you'd like to
Mhm.
share on that?
Yeah, as a storyteller, I can remember, I think the first time where I felt empowered and comfortable enough to tell my story was I was about 15 years old, and I was going into my junior year of high school. So this is around back in 2016, I would say. Um, I had done this internship through a program over the summer where I interned in the city attorney's office at City Hall. And I don't know, I just found out that there was a super cool project where other high schoolers in California were building legislative momentum to do this bold, disruptive thing, and it was to lower the voting age from 18 to 16. And I just thought, whoa, that's kind of cool. I was literally scrolling through Facebook while on my lunch break there, and I was like, wow, like this is so cool. I was literally eating up this article, and I literally in that moment, I kid you not, I was like, man, if they can do it, then so can I. And so it kind of built this domino effect of, again, like I didn't know anything about like the legislative process, about how to make a bill or where to start. But I was like, well, I'm in this environment by attorneys who probably know this so much more than me. So I started there. And from there, as I got to know them, I told them my own story of like, going through surgeries and how that's impacted me and why, now empowerment is so important to me and why I want to be a lawyer and I want to empower other people and make an impact. So I really, even as a 15-year-old, connected back, my own story to even wanting at that time wanting to become a lawyer. And so I think because of that storytelling, it really impacted them and they were like, I want to help. Like, I want to see you bring this to life. And so
Mhm.
literally they started connecting me with people. And I realized then like the power of storytelling. Like I could just imagine where like if I just told them, oh, I want to, lower the voting age from 18 to 16, for no reason because I just saw some other kids in California do it.
Mhm.
And the difference between that and then actually including my story and my why. And I feel like the why, the purpose is so powerful and being able to articulate that and connect it to the work that you're doing or the cause that you're trying to build up. I learned right then and there, like storytelling is so powerful. Like people as humans, like we feel, right? Like we feel. And even people who we meet those who are more like, I'm more logical. I'm not really attached to my emotion. But at the end of the day, like we all feel, we're all people. And so that turned into building the super cool initiative where I worked with some legislators ultimately and had a bill draft request, and it never happened because the Nevada Constitution said we couldn't do it. And the Secretary of State had invited me to tell me that, but I was like, well, that's so cool that I even got this far. For me, I saw it as a win. I was like, holy crap, the fact that the Secretary of State during that time, wanted to hear my story and had heard my story through other people. And I even had the awesome opportunity to interview for my local media newspaper that talked about the initiative that we were doing. And again, more of telling my story. And it really got out there that some national organizations even picked it up and reached out to me. And again, this is me like at 15, 16. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. But clearly, telling my story is so impactful and powerful that it's making waves that I didn't even have to do. Things were just unfolding just like that. And then I continued to hone that skill of like, wow, like people actually want to hear what I have to say. The fact that I had up until that point lived my life where I felt isolated and disconnected from myself. I even felt disconnected from other people. But telling my story kind of brought that all together. And then I also had the awesome opportunity in 2017 to give a TEDx talk in LA through somebody that I had met. And that was on youth empowerment and the project that I was doing to lower the voting age. But again, it was another sort of like proof and evidence that, oh, wow, like my story is powerful. People want to actually hear about it. And so that all those events just gave me the confidence to continue, especially in advocacy during that time, and to tell my story and realizing that it was just a beautiful way to connect with people. And you also realize that, when you tell your story and you start to really like, dissect your own story and reflect on it, that you're never alone. Like there are people who always can feel what you're going through. It may not be the same circumstance or event. Someone may have not have gone through the same surgeries that I went through, but we felt the same way. We felt disempowered. We felt isolated. We felt disconnected. And it was that feeling from storytelling that brought us closer together. I mean, even from our own conversations where where you mentioned that you've resonated, that in itself is like, we're connecting on a feeling level. And I just found that so beautiful because I just would meet people as I traveled and we'd share stories and we'd build community and, people who I never knew a thing about them 30 minutes ago. I know like their whole life story now. And it's just this beautiful thing where you just connect with people. And I've also brought that into marketing as well. Using my own story, I mean, of just last year with retinal detachment, it played a big reason into my purpose and my why for why I'm building a content marketing sort of business along with Poderoso Media with empowering my own community. And, that's to challenge the norm that, someone might say you can't do something. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, I can. And so, in a way, it really is just a way where I'm challenging myself and see how far can I go and empowering myself and making that choice again for me. No one is making this choice for me. I'm the one doing it. And so, storytelling and even now into marketing and building with Poderoso Media and the other projects that I'm involved in has always been connected from that source of storytelling because it really started off when I was 15 and I just told my story to somebody and why I wanted to do this cause. And they believed in me, they heard me, and they wanted to help me out. And I was like, wow, let me just keep doing this. Let me just keep telling people my story. And, we can like make this beautiful impact and these beautiful connections.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And you also said like, yes, you can, and you've taken that attitude and really expanded it in so many different ways. I feel like, I'm really excited to see, all these entrepreneurial opportunities that are taking place in such a short amount of time. So, with just that, yes, I can energy, and I'm sure there's a lot of creators and entrepreneurs in our audience. So, what piece of advice or what message do you want to um, give to them?
Oh my gosh, where do I start?
Anywhere.
Honestly, yeah, if I could bestow upon somebody some beautiful wisdom on what to take away, I think after all of like the this beautiful conversation that we've had, I think for sure the number one that I have learned myself from just last year was to honor your body and your needs, honor your health. Again, this is coming from somebody who has gone through 11 surgeries, likely will not be my last, but I mean I know that and I can live with that and I know what to expect. But I think most people are able-bodied and completely healthy, and most people, they can never have to worry about the fact that or even acknowledge that we're always one experience, one accident away from your health just completely changing. And I feel like, especially for our generation where we are very cognizant of our own mental health and our emotional health, right? Especially in the workplace and in business life, like, with work-life balance, with taking days off, with having hard boundaries. I think we're slowly coming more towards an understanding that, your health, not just your physical or mental, but your physical health, like, is important. It is like the foundation because without your health, you don't really have anything else. You can't really do much else. And so I would say, please honor your body and honor your needs, honor your health in whatever way that looks like for you. And so, and again, that's just coming from me. I mean, not just the fact that I went almost had gone blind last year and lost my vision, but in general, it's sad too because I often will see people talk about their stories, depending on what their situation is. But people have gone through life-changing health experiences. What if it's a condition, losing a limb, having a chronic disease, or even something as we commonly see is like cancer, right? But those individuals, when I hear their stories, they think about how they think it's too late, like, wow, I should have actually cared about this back then. And I feel like we shouldn't have to wait for the worst moment or circumstance to really evaluate and do better for ourselves physically and mentally and emotionally. So I would definitely say to honor your body and honor your needs, because that is your foundation and your bedrock. Without that, you really almost have nothing. And along with that, I would also say to live a fulfilling, authentic, and aligned life, whatever that looks like for you. I'm learning that life is too short. Anything can happen. Tomorrow is not promised. So live your life for you. And it makes me think about our earlier conversation. I actually have been thinking about death recently, and not in the way of, in the negative way of like not wanting to be on this earth anymore, but using my own mortality as a reminder that we're only here for a short amount of time. What kind of life do we want to live? What do we want to really leave before we physically leave our bodies in this world? And I feel like using my mortality as a reminder that, you know what, I'm gonna live the best day every single day. I'm gonna do what I love. I'm gonna do the things that excite me. And you know what? I ask myself too sometimes, if today were the last day that I were going to live, how would I act? What would I be doing? You know? And so I use that attitude in a positive way for me, right? And using it in a way that serves you in whatever way that works for you. But I think just reminding ourselves that life is short, and to really take advantage of the things that we love, and to stop putting things off, even the things that make us scared and uncomfortable. Yeah, I would say that.
That's absolutely incredible. And yeah, I love that we are wrapping up on the note of mortality, which is like I said, me and Alan are part of the same generation. I feel like we have so much in common. I'm also like first daughter and first so many things, and
Mhm.
um it's like you reach a certain age and you're no longer a kid. Because when you're a kid, you think, oh, this is like forever, right? You
Yeah.
don't like you don't really think about it, but now like my parents are in their 50s or 60s or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
just
Same.
really being faced um with that, like life is finite, and you also, just like you said, like permanently leaving your body behind, and what do you want to do with the time that you have on this earth? um and something else with that is, like, I have been also thinking about, probably like a lot of generations or our ancestors didn't really have the choice of what exactly they wanted,
Yeah.
or how they wanted to live their life. So, not like acknowledging that luxury and making
Yeah.
the most out of it, because I don't have to answer to anyone. I can just live however I want, for the most part,
Right.
within the law. But
Let's not get too
that's
wild now.
yeah, that's just, that's it's a very conscious moment that I'm sure a lot of our people in our community are kind of maybe asking themselves this question, or will ask themselves this question over
Yeah.
time. So just yeah, really making the most of your time. That's just really well, beautifully said. Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, Alan, before we wrap up, what is coming up for you in the next few months? I know we already spoke a little bit about some events you're hoping to organize, but what can folks expect to see around your project? Where can they find you? And yeah, how can they reach you?
Oh my gosh, yes. You can reach me on, oh my gosh, I don't have the same handle for every social media. Okay. You can reach me. I would just say I have a personal website that people can reach me on that has all of my information, my social media, and a lot more about me. If people are interested in learning more about me, I'll say out the website name, then I'll spell it out. Probablyallen.com. PROBABLYALN.com. You can find everything you need to know about me. And if you are interested in content marketing services, if you're an individual, a solo business owner, a brand or company, especially if you're mission and purpose driven, absolutely let me know. I'm still taking on clients right now to work with, and I would love to work with you and see if we're a right fit for each other. And as for Poderoso Media, I'm super excited because I'm now onboarding sort of like my first official team member, a content marketing specialist who will be working with me. His name is Daniel. And so I'm super excited to work with him to collaborate and build things out. One of the Q1 and Q2 goals and intentions that we have is to really build out partnerships with small, medium, and large Latinx and Hispanic organizations in business and entrepreneurship. And then with establishing those partnerships and collaborations to either put on something for that's marketing or an event, or how we can be of service to them. From there, using those connections and building sort of like a name for ourselves in that industry and world. And then eventually later this year, the vision is to put on in-person events, so a pilot sort of program with a pilot city where we can actually put on these events test them out, see what works and what doesn't work, and just create joyful, memorable, authentic experiences with people within our community. And again, it's not only just for Latinx and Hispanic community, but for anybody really. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, we welcome you with open arms and want to empower you and uplift you in whatever way we can. And you can check out more of us at poderosomedia.com. That's PODEROSOMEDIA.com.
That's incredible. Thank you so, so much for this amazing, amazing day of recording our conversation and this episode, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy. This episode is close to my heart because of just like the connection we've built in the past. So I really hope
Yeah.
people do get to enjoy it. And yeah, I will be linking all of those links down in the description below. So feel free, folks, to scroll down and click those links. If you are, like Alan mentioned, a business owner, entrepreneur, or an up and coming entrepreneur, definitely make sure to check out Poderoso Media because they have so many incredible resources. But yeah, Alan, I'm so happy that you accepted our invitation, and maybe we can do this again because I feel like me and you can go on and on for many hours.
Oh, absolutely. You let me know. I'll be back. But I would like to say thank you as well for the time and for taking, yeah, the time to listen to me and for inviting me on this podcast.
Amazing, Alvin. Well, I hope you stay healthy and strong, and I hope to see you again in another episode. And yeah, I'll be keeping up with what you're doing and keeping in touch with your community as well. So thank you again for being here. Have a good one, everybody.